Welcome back to video number 26 in our Quick Strike series of videos for February. Today we are going to cover analysis tools, quick option chart. If you recall, if you're watching these in order, our previous video we looked at vol to vol expected range. And if you are watching this as your first video, I almost recommend you go back and watch the expected range one first, since we covered what is essentially going to be the same principle in a great detail here in expected range. And the intent of the quick option chart is just to show you the different values really which are available for viewing, as well as a couple other nuances of the chart itself. Before we get started, let's remind ourselves where we are. We logged in today in the product group interest rates, with our favorite product being the 10-year. And as always, we're landing on the product overview. As a reminder, again, you can change your favorite product over here in the My Account section under the Preferences menu. So let's get started and take a look at the quick option chart. Now, if you are watching this in sequence, then you'll see this looks somewhat familiar to what we saw in the expected range tool. A little bit different in some of the adjustments or some of the defaults, but generally showing the same thing. So what we have here is we have a pricing sheet basically, but we have a graphical pricing sheet. And what we see, and I'll explain sort of what we're looking at from a value standpoint before we get into some of the other things on the tab set, and as well as some of the other tools on the analysis bar. So what we're showing here, pricing sheet, you'll recall, had all this analysis up here, plus you see a little bit extra here with the zoom in and zoom out and advanced. Okay, but we're looking at prices. So we're basically looking at call and put prices by strike. So you'll see that the calls are in blue and the puts are in yellow or orange, depending on your monitor. And we see also little blue boxes as well. So those are call settles and put settles. So what we try to do here is give you a graphical representation of what prices look like. So you can see what looked more expensive, where the downside was in comparison to the upside, how the at the monies looked from a put and call standpoint, whether they were close to even or not, depending on where this current futures line is versus where this settlement line was. So you could see that we're showing two bars in each of these strikes. And you'll notice that the dashed line is over here and the solid line's over here. So the market opened today around with the 131 strike as the at the money, and today the market was down. As you can see, it was down 23 ticks, where we now have the 130 half as our at the money. So what we try to do is, if there is a change in at the money during the day in this price chart, we show both call and put values for the at the monies, so you can see that there was some significant move or some change in strike throughout the day. If a strike was not the at the money, we simply show the out of the money. So in this case, we're showing the out of the money puts, and over here we're showing the out of the money calls. So if we click on these bars, we're going to get some information about those bars: call value, put value, straddle, the Greeks, and open interest and volume numbers. Now you're seeing this chart, but starting tomorrow, you're going to see a different pop-up. So we have streamlined the pop-ups, made them a little bigger, a little easier to read. So all the information is the same, but you're getting the general sense of what's here. Okay, so as you recall from yesterday, let's just dive into what we talked about yesterday. We have our standard deviation ranges here, right? This was the whole point of the expected range. So we could say, based on this at the money volatility with this many days to expiration, this is the expected standard deviation that we would have, or range in the underlying that we have based on this annualized vol for this number of days left to expiration. So we see our 1 standard, 2 standard, and 3 standard deviation ranges. And we see the shading areas here as well: 1 standard, then 2, and then 3. So you see that we don't see white over here on the upside because we're not quite getting to the outside of the standard deviation. Now, how do we do that if it's not in here? We can hit the zoom out button, and this will take us out, and now we see all 3 standard deviations. So this is more like the default view that you would expect to see over in the expected range, but we are adhering to the strike mode for the pricing sheet on the initial presentation of these charts. Okay, so what else do we see on this chart? We also see the volatility curves. You see these in orange. So we have the current vol and then the settle vol. So we thought this was another great way to get a lot more information on a single page. So we're not only seeing prices, but change in the settlement, but also the change in volatility. So in this case, we had a small change in volatility, but a fairly significant change in the underlying. So probably a lot of this change from where it settled to where it is now is probably related to the futures movement. Okay, so just like on the other chart, we're showing our odd delta plots here. So again, you get a good idea of theoretically what the probabilities are for these strikes getting touched or becoming in the money, right? And what we also have in the settings, just like we had in the expected range, we had show odd delta, show the expected range, show the settles, and we have show even settle. So I could click that box and it'll show all the even deltas as well. And if I want to turn off the little settle boxes, I can do that. Okay, and you can turn off the expected range as well if you'd like, so you get a little bit different look, but I just don't think it's the same without the expected range, so I always leave that one on. I keep the even deltas off as the default, and I show the settles, and I really like this chart because it tells me a lot about what's going on. I see the pricing within a standard deviation, I see the volatility, so I start to see where the curve really starts to change, and I see the change from open and the price from a price standpoint as well as the future. So a lot going on here. In a quick look, you can really see what's happening here. Okay, so we're showing prices, which basically showing you call and puts together, but there's a version that just shows the calls. Okay, so now you're only going to see blue bars, just shows the puts, and then shows the straddle values here. Okay, so you get some interesting perspective by looking at these. So here's the prices, give you a different look at things. But again, I like seeing both out of the money puts, out of the money calls, and the strikes that were at the monies. I can also see the Greeks. So again, if you're newer to options, you can start to see how the deltas look based on strike and you know how much in the money, out of the money it is. So here we're seeing a call delta, and it makes sense. These deep in the money calls have a higher delta, and these out of the monies have a lower delta. And we're going to see the opposite for the puts, right? So these deep in the money puts have a more of a negative delta than these out of the money puts. And then we could also look at gamma, which looks very similar to our distribution behind on the chart here. And we can look at vega, and you're going to see that looks fairly similar, the magnitude being a little bit different. And theta is going to be our decay, and as you would expect, our decay is greatest at the money. All right, so a lot of interesting ways to look at this. Again, we were trying to give you sort of a visual, instead of just seeing numbers. If you see charts, sometimes those charts have much more of an impact than just looking at the numbers. So when you could see it like this, you kind of get the whole sense of what that expiration is doing, what it means, where there's activity, where there's the biggest delta risk, where's the biggest theta risk, that type of thing. So I really like the way these charts represent. Okay, so we'll go back to the prices again, and then as you recall from the expected range, we have open interest, intraday, open interest, OI total, OI change, and then volume numbers, intraday volume, and change in volume. So similar information that or the same information that we were seeing on the expected range chart, but now it's just you have a little bit more uh, um, data available in terms of that the volatility curve is here as well. Okay, still seeing generally the same things. So we won't even really bother going through and clicking through to all these different tabs because you've seen those before. Okay, so that's the crux of this. So it's meant to give you a visual on pricing and Greeks as well as open interest and volume, like we saw in the expected range. You can move this chart in and out. So if you want to zoom in, you can click the zoom in button, and that's going to lessen the range of strikes on the x-axis, so you can really get a little bit more robust view of a particular range of standard deviation. Okay, so if we wanted to zoom into just basically one, we could see what's going on here. But again, I like depending on what expiration it is and how many strikes are active and how much time to expiration, I like to sort of get a good idea of the whole perspective of all three standard deviations. Okay, and then finally over here, we have our advanced menu like we saw before, our strike mode like we saw before. So this, everything but the zoom in and zoom out, and the settings. Sorry, the settings, zoom in and zoom out. That is what is added for the quick option chart, and the rest is the same for as if it's a regular pricing sheet. So I could come in here and I could change this volatility down to 4, and you'll see a number of changes in terms of the range tightens up. You'll see some of the prices fall. I can make this go out into 15 days, and you're going to see it tighten up even further, right? So it's a nice way to get a perspective of what happens to these ranges when vol goes down, when days go down, if days increase, if vol goes up, if the futures move, right? It'll give you a good understanding and a real visual to pricing and to the Greeks, as opposed to just the common pricing sheet table. So that's it for today. Again, we're on the Analysis Tools Quick Option Chart, which is close cousin to the expected range tool. We are hoping that you're enjoying these videos. We have a few more left in the month. But for now, keep watching and we will see you soon. Thanks.